Hey there, welcome to This Might Not Work. Today's episode features Roman Mironov. Roman is a certified relationship coach under a Tony Robbins program, and he specifically helps people keep and find the love of their lives, bring passion and joy into their relationships again, save their relationships from falling apart, and recover from a breakup and move on quickly. You can go to his website, romanmironov.com, and book a no-fee breakthrough session or check out one of his courses. And while you're at it, do check out the testimonials page for some of the most moving and powerful testimonials that I've ever found on an independent coach or consultant's website. They're just mind blowing. Do check them out. And should you feel the need to avail one of his services, do mention my name so that he's able to give you a 30% discount. You can also reach out to Roman through one of his social media channels: YouTube, Instagram, Reddit, website. It's all there. I'll leave the links in the show notes below. Which brings me to the podcast episode. This episode doesn't really talk about relationships per se. We basically explore a taboo topic, which is porn addiction. Most importantly, how addiction to pornography impacts one's behavior and productivity at the workplace, and also relationships, both at the work and the personal front. We also talk about some preventive and corrective measures to fix this addiction. I found the episode to be quite informative. I hope you do too. Enjoy the rest of the show. Hey Roman, how have you been doing?
Hi, Sanil. I'm great. Thank you so much. And thank you for having me. It's a pleasure, and I'm sure it's going to be an interesting conversation.
Well, the pleasure is all mine. Before we get going, I would like you to introduce yourself and tell the audience who you are, what you do, and what are you most excited about today.
Yes, and thank you for the opportunity. I am a coach, a life coach working from Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I help people build a happier lifestyle and really realize their full potential in life. And one way I do this is through helping them beat porn addiction.
Wow. Okay, that's a unique niche of sorts because I don't get to bump into many coaches who specialize in helping people get rid of their porn addiction. So, yeah, this is going to be a unique conversation for sure. Speaking of porn, particularly, how do you think it's porn addiction is linked to, let's say, workplace behavior in general?
I would say that there are two ways porn addiction influences workplace behavior. And the first one is just sheer waste of time because
Mhm.
people just simply might be watching 1 or 2 hours of porn during their 8 hour work shift, especially now that so many people work from home. And the second way is that after you watch porn and masturbate, you actually feel depleted. You don't feel motivated to go back to your work because it's like you this is your happiness level or your motivation level.
Mhm.
And it's a straight line. And once you watch porn, it has a spike. Yeah. And after that spike, so you feel great, you feel motivated to watch porn, you feel excited. But after that spike, you go even below that average line. You go below because this is what happens to us. We want that spike, we want that excitement continue, but it doesn't. So we think that now, okay, now I'm in a worse mood that I had before I started. That's why we just don't have the same motivation to work.
Wow. That kind of like sounds kept the caffeine crash. We wake up in the morning, the first thing we do is make ourselves a good cup of hot, warm coffee. And a few hours later, we're like going down.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
then it takes us another cup of coffee to get our motivation levels to a certain level, level of high performance or sustainable performance. However, the whole bit about caffeine addiction is it's just not sustainable. It is going to hurt you. And thinking about porn addiction and from hearing all the things that it's capable of doing to us as men? Because for men, it's part of their lifestyle. It becomes part of their lifestyle, not addiction, but porn in general, or at least masturbation in general. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead, please.
I wanted to say that you're right. It's like caffeine addiction, caffeine spike, and the same analogy is sugar crash.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right. Porn has really become a a lifestyle thing because so many men grew up with it, especially the millennials and the future generations, because it's so available, so accessible, and it's now so ingrained in our culture because we have so much exposure to nudity and to all the kinds of content that is so sexual in its nature. So we feel that. Now, it's good. It's a good thing in one sense because it helps us develop our sexuality, and that's good. And we are not shameful of our sexuality. That's good. But I think that at the same time, porn just went over the edge too much, and it just pushes people into areas that are, unhealthy.
So during a previous take at this podcast, I slipped up the numbers of sorts. Well, it's something that I heard that 70% of the content on the internet is porn, and you corrected me that it's somewhat like 1/3, maybe even 1/4. We don't know actually the true numbers, but that much content is porn. And now that the world is working from home, thanks to the outbreak of the pandemic, I'm only wondering how bad has the situation become in the past 14 to 18 months?
That's a good question. I don't know the exact numbers, but based on my practice, it's been worsening because I have more clients contacting me. I have more followers following me on social media and whatnot. And the reason is that, yeah, people are at home and they are totally in control of what they do, and there are no supervisors watching them, so they can actually watch porn as much as they want. And the problem with porn is that of all the addictions, it is probably the most accessible and the easiest to access because it's just a couple of clicks away.
Mm-hmm.
Even if, let's take other addictions like food. With food, you need to make money, you need to go buy food, and you oftentimes need to cook it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not 2 clicks as with porn. Or take drugs. You also need to make money, you need to buy those drugs, you need to inject them or in any way to consume them. That's so much more difficult compared to porn. That's why I believe porn is especially dangerous.
Yeah. Do you think there are ways to prevent porn addiction to begin with? Because we all know it's free, we all know it's out there. It's not a secret anymore. Everyone knows that porn exists, everyone knows where to find it. And nowadays we don't even have to find it. It comes to us by way of WhatsApp messages or iMessages. So I don't think there's even a need for people to go out and look for pornographic material. It's just way too accessible.
Yes, exactly. It's at their fingertips. And I would say prevention is a noble thing. It's something that we definitely need to do. And at the same time, it's difficult because we are wired to crave that kind of material because the sex drive is one of the most strong drives in nature. That's the base of evolution. And that's why when we start watching porn, we get addicted to it quickly. But I would say there are 2 ways to do prevention. The first one is to talk to kids about it as early as possible. Well, let's say around 11 or 12 years old is a good age. My son is 11 years right now, and I have talked to him about this. And the second way is to keep bombarding people with messages that porn is not healthy. until they really get conscious and realize that this is causing them problems.
Wow. So I'll get to the workplace again, but you mentioned that you had a conversation with your son recently, who's 11. How do you get to, or where do we begin to have this conversation with kids? How's that conversation even like? I ask because of two reasons. Because many of the folks at the workplace, they have their families, and they definitely will get to a position or point in life when they have to have this conversation with their kids. I've got a 10-year-old myself, and I'm wondering already when and how am I going to have this conversation with my son. So just out of curiosity, how do you do it? Where do you start? What's the starting point like?
I think there is an easy way to do this, sort of hack in the system. Those kids, they watch a lot of videos. They are online all the time. So speak their language. Send them a link to a video or watch a video together. And then just ask them questions about it. What do they think about it? What do they think about porn? What do they think about those dangers? You need to tread very carefully, that's for sure. But that's a good start.
Oh, yeah.
The last thing, don't preach, don't moralize, don't condemn porn. Because porn in and of itself, it's not a bad thing. It's not, nothing is good or bad. It's just a thing. But it comes with risks. So you just want to point out those risks. Don't condemn.
Yeah, totally makes sense. Totally makes sense. Not exactly a conversation that I'm looking forward to, but it's an important conversation that I have to have, and I'm pretty sure many of the listeners will have to have at some point in their lives. Going back to the workplace employee behavior, I read this study somewhere, and it's a study published in the Journal of Business Ethics, which clearly says that choosing to consume pornography causes individuals to behave less ethically, because unethical employee behavior has linked to numerous negative organizational outcomes, including fraud, collusion, and other self-serving behaviors. The results have implications for the most societal organizations. So that's like workplace behavior. Coming out of outside the workplace, I'm pretty sure you might have had clients, or you might have had people reach out to you for relationship advice, and how pornography is hurting their relationships as well. How do you think, where do you think they are in terms of their lives, and how drastically has the pornographic addiction been impacting their lives?
He's 47 and he masturbated for more than 35 years. And he basically has never had a relationship in his life. All he has had is just a few nights. That's it. And he was never able to do that because he always lacked confidence. So literally watching porn, having to hide, having to feel shameful, especially in his relationship with his mother, because he felt that his mother is pretty controlling, and so he always thought that he had to hide his porn from her. That's what he did his entire life, and he was never able to develop confidence. Instead of it, he bears a lot of shame.
Wow. Now that you're talking about this, I can't help but wonder, how is having that conversation with our kids at the right time important when it comes to their development into mature adults? I'm only wondering, is there a way we can? So we talked about preventing it. What about people who are addicted to it, but they really don't want to consult a coach or a therapist? Do you think there's something that they can do themselves to keep themselves in check, or get their lives in order?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely, they can. And one way to do this is to read books about. Yeah, and by the way, let me give you a couple of terms that are important. The first term is NoFap, which means no masturbation. This is a system that tells you that if you don't masturbate or fap, then you get a lot of benefits in terms of health, confidence, and whatnot. And the other term is PMO, which stands for porn, masturbation, and orgasm. So NoFap and PMO, those are the two terms. And so people can simply look online for these things, NoFap and PMO, see what other people are doing, read books about it, take courses, and basically do it on their own. I would say that if they have discipline, intrinsic discipline, they could absolutely beat porn. If they feel that they lack discipline or they have been struggling with this, let's say relapsing and then starting all over again, relapsing and then starting all over again, having a coach really helps because it introduces this level of accountability where you don't want to disappoint your coach. And of course, the coach will also bring other benefits, including awareness and solutions tailored to your own unique needs. But to answer your question, yes, normally it is possible to do this without a coach.
So tell me more about NoFap, because I've heard a lot about NoFap. Primarily, not because I was looking for it, primarily because some of the influencers that I'm following on YouTube or maybe even in the podcast world, they did slip in the NoFap thing many times, and it has always intrigued me. I've tried to look at it. I got the idea in gist, but I also get the number one pushback when it comes to NoFap. It's like it's too hard. Which brings me to the ultimate question. If it's too hard and if it's a self-discipline thing, how do people stay on the track to make sure that they do this NoFap thing for a particular period of time?
I believe that it starts with having motivation, finding your single motivating factor. Let's say for that example of the client that I gave, for him that would be getting more confidence.
Mm.
And you go from that motivation. You always keep reminding yourself about it while you're doing this. You keep reprogramming your mind this way. And yeah, that's important. And another thing that really helps that I'm absolutely adamant about is to replace the habit, not just to stop watching porn, because that's too difficult. If you stop watching porn, your brain will say, hey, where's my porn? Where's my excitement? I need it. And it's going to be very difficult. But if you give your brain something, a habit, in place of watching porn, that makes a huge difference. And let's say, here's how you can do it. Simple. Let's say you watch a TV show that you like. Maybe you're a fan of Star Wars. You like Mandalorian. So you stop watching it at all. So you deny yourself the pleasure. And by denying the pleasure, you magnify it. And then you watch it only when a sex urge comes up in you. Instead of watching porn, you watch, let's say, 5 or 10 minutes of Mandalorian every time you have that urge. And that literally rewires your brain.
Wow, that sounds like a nice hack. It's a good way to replace your existing habit with another one. It reminds me of Nicorette, or in order to get rid of the nicotine addiction, some companies came up with this idea of, well, let's create a chewing gum of sorts so that it helps people get rid of this addiction. I don't know what's inside the chewing gums, but it certainly has been quite effective. I've had a couple of friends who were able to successfully quit smoking once they got onto the chewing gum thing.
That's right. That's right. And by the way, chewing gum is good for you in general, unless it has too much sugar in it. So this is another good pleasure that you could use as a replacement habit. Let's say instead of watching porn, you just chew gum a little bit.
Yeah, it's like a mental trigger that you create for yourself, as in, my mind's want to do this, but yeah, let me do something else. Interesting. One of the books that I read, this was like many years back, and I don't read a lot of self-help because I'm surrounded by positive people anyway. So I get all my self-help and personal development education through them. But one of the books that I read, I think this was Think and Grow Rich, which talked about this concept of sexual transmutation. And this was because I read it back then, it didn't make a lot of sense. But where do you think sexual transmutation stands compared to porn addiction? And do you think it can be a healthy way to come out of this addiction?
I would say that sexual transmutation, or put in simple words, rechanneling of sexual energy into other areas of your life, is a very good and a very healthy thing. What, as I mentioned before, the sex drive is one of the most strong motivators in nature. It's basically, when you think of your motivation, there is no stronger component than that. Because just think about it. When you feel a really strong sex urge, really strong sex drive, you go and just you get sex. You're pushed to have sex, and that's the strongest motivator. So the idea behind sexual transmutation is that you take that energy, and instead of spending it having sex, you rechannel it into something else. And this could be your work. This also works very well with creativity. You're very creative when you're hoarding. To try this, I usually recommend going for 30 days without, of course, watching porn and without ejaculation. So you do semen retention for 30 days. And you see how this works for you. Most people report that they have life becomes more exciting. Their overall happiness with life just increases. And their sex drive is stronger. They enjoy sex more.
So you mentioned that they can continue to watch porn, but no ejaculation. And that's one way to channelize energy. But that's to do with sexual transmutation. But if it's nofap doesn't include, is nofap and sexual transmutation one and the same thing, or are they different concepts?
Pretty much the same thing. So you don't watch porn, you don't ejaculate. With nofap, I would say there are two distinctions. Normally, I think nofappers, they are hard. They're harder on themselves because they want to go 60 days or 90 days or just forever without ejaculation. And that's, that this might be good for someone, but I don't think that this is very healthy or a very good idea for like the entire population or for an average Joe. I don't recommend that. And the second thing about nofap is that the raw, it's somehow, some people who are on nofap, they tend to promise by heaven by doing nofap, and really superhero powers, really strong female attraction, really like tons of confidence, like becoming Superman. And some people buy into this, and when they don't get those results, because well, let's face it, that's impossible.
Mm-hmm.
Because if those results were available, everyone would get them, right? Just by not ejaculating. So don't buy. I would recommend not buying into this and just looking for simpler, cleaner results, but that are still achievable. And those are overall happiness with life, enjoying sex more, and being more confident.
Mm-hmm. So if we go by your general recommendation, that will be trying nofap for 10, 15 days. Okay, going nofap for 30 days straight and see what it's like. And even for sexual transmutation, I don't know why do I end up saying transportation, but yeah, transmutation for 30 days straight. Well, yeah, those are like good, those definitely sound like good challenges for people who are addicted to pornography at some level. Speaking of these challenges, have you had any, or have you had any experiences in which people have gone on to the nofap or sexual transmutation, again, transmutation challenge, but have they happen to relapse? Like they go on for 7 days, then they relapse, they start from zero, they go on for 7 to 10 days, relapse, then they totally quit. Have you had such cases? It's very much possible because just like any other addiction, it's a hard transition to make. And most people quit when they fail the first few times.
Yes. And you basically answered your question.
How has your experience been? What do you tell clients or people who relapse into such things?
One thing I tell them is that yes, you are starting over, but this time you're not starting from scratch. You're starting from experience. And every time you do it, it's easier because now you have the awareness, you have the information, you have the realization of what triggered you last time. And they also build experience. Experience means shame, or guilt, whatever emotion they feel. And the more they build it up to a threshold. And at this threshold, they say, "Oh, enough is enough. I'm going to quit it." So that's helpful.
Wow, this is fantastic. I mean, it's like, so honestly, I haven't had any conversation like this before with even some of my closest friends. So, yes, we certainly have chatted into those sensitive areas that I usually don't talk about in general. But yes, I would say this is education for a lot of people who have an addiction of sorts. Well, addictions can be at many levels. It could be a mild addiction, it could be a moderate addiction, it could be danger zone addiction. Yeah, so addictions can be at many levels, yet they really don't believe in the fact that they could be addicted to it. And I think that's one of the reasons why these mild addictions went on to grow into big massive addictions that they are just not able to get rid of. In fact, when I was researching for preparing for this interview, I bumped into this article by some man, 51, 52-year-old, who wrote a book on getting rid of porn addiction and who has been masturbating for 30 odd years, 30 plus years. Yeah, so people realize that they have to deal with this addiction, as in deal for good with this addiction quite late in life. So I'm pretty sure whoever is listening will find value in whatever insights and information that you have shared. And speaking of porn and the workplace, the clear link from my experience listening to all other people has been this, that their level of focus and concentration drops down drastically if they are habitual of accessing porn for pleasure. From our conversation, it's pretty clear that there are certain things that they can do. Trying no fap and trying this idea of sexual transmutation. Yes, I said this correctly. Sexual transmutation for 30 days straight. And even if they fail during the 30 days, the only course of action is to try again because you're not starting from the scratch. Well, those certainly are some solid ideas that you've shared, Roman. Anything else that you would like to share with the audience, especially the ones who are aiming for high performance? Because I don't see anyone performing at a higher level if they're actually addicted at some area in their lives. So, what would you like to say to these people who are really aiming for high performance and also have pornographic addiction?
Yes, I want to add to this very beautiful idea that you mentioned that people who do a lot of porn, they have problems with their focus and concentration. That is absolutely true. That is absolutely true because what happens when we watch a lot of porn, we overstimulate ourselves. We overstimulate our excitement centers in our brain, and those are neurotransmitter dopamine receptors.
Mhm.
So what happens is that our receptors downregulate, so there are fewer of them, and it makes it difficult for us to feel motivated and to feel excited and really to feel all the different sensations. That's why you're not able to focus. That's where the brain fog comes from. And what happens when you stop watching porn is that you upregulate those dopamine receptors. You have more of them, and it becomes easier to be motivated. It becomes easier to be stimulated and excited and happy with your life. And the first thing that you notice is that your senses heighten. You're more aware of what's going on around you, and that translates into higher productivity. You just look at the monitor in front of you, and you see it better. And that means concentration, higher concentration right there.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I was going through a study, well, not exactly a study, I was going through an article that mentioned that there are over 85 studies that link poor mental and emotional health to porn use. These effects range from brain fog, which is for real, and social anxiety through depression, negative body image and flashbacks, eating disorders, which is on the rise in young people, which is causing more deaths than any other mental illnesses combined. So it's staggering to even think uh, what something as simple as, I'm tempted to say innocent, because most people don't stumble into pornography accidentally and then they're like hooked for life. It's amazing to see something as simple, again, not simple, something as accessible as pornography becoming the bane of our existence, so to speak.
That's true. That's true. And you're absolutely right. The problem with it is it seems so like there is this paradox. It seems so easy, so unharmful, so natural. And that's why actually so many people support watching porn, because they say it's healthy for your prostate to masturbate, it's healthy to, because that's normal, that's your sex drive. But at the same time, because it actually takes advantage of our sex drive and then it rewires it in an unhealthy way. That's why it's so dangerous, because again, the sex drive is one of the strongest things in nature. And so I don't think that this is something that we should be playing with. That's like playing with fire.
Wow. Wow. That's a powerful idea. Roman, this has been a fun conversation and quite an insightful one. It's, like I said, it's something that I usually don't talk about among friends when I'm with my friends, and they don't talk about their own thing with me. Yeah, I think it's still a taboo topic when we are out with friends. It's something that you only discuss with someone very close, maybe to a therapist or a coach. Yet most people don't have a therapist or a coach. So there's this dilemma of sorts, and so people end up essentially with an addiction which they carry for the rest of their life. Not exactly a good trade to make. Yeah, like I said, thanks again for sharing your insights, Roman. Any parting thoughts, remarks that you would like to leave the audience with?
Do a 30-day challenge. No porn and no masturbation. Give it a try and see how it works for you. It might be life-changing.
Wow. Yeah. And where can people find you online?
Yeah, the best way to find me is to go to my website, which is romanmironov.com, spelled as ROMANMIRONOV.com. Hit the contact tab and sign up for a free no-fab breakthrough session. And we'll go from there. And also make sure to mention that you're coming off Sunil's podcast, and I'll be happy to give you a 30% discount.
Awesome. That's fantastic. So, folks, Roman is a fantastic relationship coach. You should just go to his website and check out the testimonials page. You'll be blown away with the kind of people who have worked with and who've been courageous enough to leave a testimonial. And those testimonials certainly did move me at a personal level. You should certainly check out his website, the testimonials, and do reach out. You can get a 30% off, and there's also a free consultation in which Roman will be happy to walk you through the process. So thank you so much for doing this, Roman. Really appreciate it. And I will leave the links, all the important links, in the show notes, along with links to the studies at ResearchGate. It's a 40-page document. I went through the abstract many times and went through certain pages in that study, which is quite insightful. And this talk and the links to the websites, all the other resources, is certainly going to open people's minds. And I hope they're able to take some positive action towards it and do something about it. They can begin with a no-fap challenge for sure. Thank you again for your time, Roman. Really appreciate it. We'll meet again.
Yes, I'd love to, because this has been such, as you said, fun conversation. Thank you so much. It's been a privilege.
Absolutely. All right, folks, thanks a gazillion for your time and attention. You could have chosen to do something else or even listen to someone else, but you chose this podcast, and I deeply appreciate that. Uh, if you like what you've heard, please share it with your friends, family, and loved ones. It helps the podcast stay in good standing with the podcast platform algorithms, and it helps me stay motivated to bring in more awesomeness to you. Until we meet again, stay safe, healthy, and keep those stories coming. Thank you. All right, folks. Thanks a gazillion for your time and all right, folks, thanks a gazillion for your time and attention. You could have chosen to do something else or even listen to someone else, but you chose this podcast, and I deeply appreciate that. If you like what you heard, please share it with your friends, family, and loved ones. It helps the podcast stay in good standing with the platform algorithms, and it helps me stay motivated to bring in more awesomeness to you. Until we meet again, stay safe, healthy, and keep those stories coming. Thank you.